So we're going to talk about how problems with your stomach can lead to depression, and we're going to go over some studies here, and I'll have links to all these studies in the description below in case you need to access them. But anytime I talk about depression, I like to make sure that people understand that this is not something that you just want to ignore or that you should feel like that you need to hide. Like, this is not a personality problem. This isn't just a why don't you just buck up type situation. There's physiological malfunctions going on that are creating this, and they're not your fault. It's not something that you should feel ashamed about. Since depression can really take a person to a very dark place very quickly, you really want to be able to get the help that you need if you start feeling like you're moving in that direction. So don't be afraid to talk to somebody. If you don't have anybody to talk to, just call one of those helplines. You don't have to worry about, well, what are they going to think about me? Who cares? You're never going to see them. They're not going to know who you are. But they're trained to help you get past that rough spot, and then you can hang up the phone. Never see them again. So don't worry about that. Be willing to get the help that you need so that you can stay on the planet long enough to do the work to fix the actual underlying cause of what's creating this issue. So when we're looking at issues with the stomach creating depression, because there's a variety of things that can create this depression situation, but in this video we're going to talk about things with your stomach and your digestion and your gut. So to start off, let's look at the fact that there are quite a few studies on the connection between PPI use and depression, or a proton pump inhibitor. This is a medication that people use to turn off stomach acid when they're having acid reflux situations. So we'll look at this study like use of proton pump inhibitors is associated with depression, proton pump inhibitors use and risk of depression among Sudanese, proton pump inhibitor use and the risk of depression and anxiety in children. Like it's not already hard enough to be a teenager, we gotta throw this on top of it. But the one I really want to jump into is this chronic use of proton pump inhibitors, a potential link to amino acid deficiency and the development of depression. So they say in this study that long-term PPI use is associated with several non-specific symptoms, including GI upset, headache, and fatigue. Of more concern, however, is the increased risk of fractures, nutrient deficiencies, protein malnutrition, and infections, including H. pylori and such. So we're looking at issues that can come about from using these proton pump inhibitors where we're turning off stomach acid. So I don't want you to view this like a side effect of using a PPI is depression. It's not a side effect. We're looking at direct effects that come from turning off that digestive process. So this study went on to say protein and micronutrient malnutrition are especially concerning as amino acids, electrolytes, and vitamins are critical substrates in numerous biological functions. While the normal resting gastric pH is considered to be less than pH of 3, long-standing PPI usage places the gastric environment at a pH of 5 to 7. In addition to impaired denaturization of proteins, activation of pepsin is most significant at pH of 2, while its peak protease activity is between 1.8 and 2.3. So we're going to talk about some of these factors when we're looking at the pH of the stomach, but one thing we really want to touch on is our ability to break down those proteins and access what's called amino acids. We get our amino acids from the proteins that we consume, but we need to be able to break those proteins down to access those amino acids. Now, in order to do that, we need the stomach to be acidified correctly to activate enzymes like this pepsin, and we also need the stomach acidified correctly so that when that acidic food leaves the stomach, it will trigger other activity like the pancreas pushing out enzymes that help us break those proteins down further into these amino acids. So to understand why this is a problem when it comes to depression, let's look at this study on dysfunction of neurotransmitter metabolism is associated with the severity of depression. And they say, presently research has discovered that the imbalance of tryptophan metabolism is often present in patients with major depressive disorder. This study also said that the most common neurotransmitters that are deficient or lacking in people that are dealing with depression are serotonin, dopamine, and norepinephrine. So when they're talking about this low tryptophan issue, the tryptophan is an amino acid that the body needs to be able to create this serotonin. We also see that another amino acid, tyrosine, can be low, and that's needed for dopamine and norepinephrine. So we're looking at those neurotransmitters that are really needed for us to feel good and for the body to function and the mind to work the way that it's supposed to. And when we don't have these amino acids present, well, now those neurotransmitters are not going to work the way that they're supposed to. So what we're seeing is that these PPIs have the ability to turn off stomach acid and restrict our ability to access those amino acids that we need. Here's the biggest thing to understand. A person doesn't need to be on a PPI to have low stomach acid. There's a wide variety of reasons that a person can have a hard time creating enough stomach acid to break those proteins down into the amino acids that allow the brain and the body to function correctly. So a person could be stressed. That can restrict their ability to make enough stomach acid. A person might not have enough resources. We're going to see in a minute that low resources are very common with this depression issue. So there are reasons that a person might not be making enough stomach acid even if they're not taking a PPI. Now, keep in mind that if your doctor's telling you to take a PPI, I'm not telling you not to take that just because I'm showing all these studies where it can create trouble. Remember, I'm not a doctor. I'm not giving anybody medical advice. I'm basically a professional comic turned nutrition author because when I lost my voice for 8 years and 23 different doctors couldn't figure that out, I had to dig for my own answers. So now, for 20 years, I've been teaching health professionals in more than 40 countries how to help their clients fix the actual underlying causes of problems instead of just covering up the symptoms. But when those doctors were putting me on PPIs to try to get my voice back, through my life, I have basically been a happy, optimistic guy. But while I was taking those PPIs and turning off my digestion, I was having depression issues. And I was like, what is going on? Why am I sad? And people are like, well, you lost your voice. You can't talk. Why wouldn't you be depressed? But I knew that that wasn't it. I felt different. I felt different as a person. It didn't seem like what I was thinking about was making me depressed. It just felt like my body was operating differently, and so was my brain. So now this makes a lot more sense to me. But we also want to look beyond just this stomach acid situation. Beyond just not having the ability to break down the food, when someone doesn't have enough stomach acid, that also leaves the front door for all the bad guys to come in on the food that we're eating. So if we create some type of overgrowth of bacteria or some kind of yeast, mold, fungal type bad guys, either in the stomach or the small intestine, or an issue in the large intestine where we have a dysbiosis going on, in any of those situations, those overgrowth issues have the ability to create inflammation. Now, when there's a lot of inflammation in the digestive tract, that makes the body create another enzyme that will come down and it will steal that tryptophan that was supposed to be used to create serotonin, and it will use it to make anti-inflammatory metabolites. So now that tryptophan is even lower, and now the person's not having the ability to make all those neurotransmitters work because of this inflammation going on from some type of overgrowth in the digestive tract. So just know that there can be issues beyond just low stomach acid itself that can restrict our body's ability to use the amino acids the way that they're supposed to be used. Now, let's go beyond amino acids a little bit, because some people will say, oh, we already looked at those neurotransmitters. That wasn't it for everybody, so that can't be it. So a lot of times the medical world is just looking for one thing that's going to be the answer, but the human body is more complicated than that, and we are actually unique individuals. It's not always going to be the same answer for every single person. So let's look at this study here on mineral homeostasis and depression, and they say new data in the literature suggests that proper concentrations of essential macro and micronutrients play an important role in maintaining mental health, and that disturbances in the metabolism of mineral compounds may contribute to the development and progression of depressive disorders. So this is what we see with our clients most commonly, is that they appear to have a lack of minerals needed to allow signals to travel from the body to the brain and from the brain back to the body. And when there's not enough minerals in this system, then those signals get dropped and now everything doesn't work correctly and we feel depressed. So let's also look at this study here on relationship between low blood pressure and depressive symptomology. And they saw the very strong correlation between low blood pressure and these depressive symptoms. And that's what we see with our clients too. So a simple thing that you could do at home is you can pick up a blood pressure cuff at any pharmacy for $40 and just look at your resting blood pressure at least 2 hours after a meal. And if that top systolic number is less than 112, that can be a sign that minerals are likely low in the system. Now, this is not a diagnostic thing. There are other aspects of the body that can kind of contribute to this blood pressure reading as well. But if you're seeing a really low number, if it's like 99/60, well, that's a really strong indication that mineral levels are low. Now, what we want to understand is that when minerals are low, this all leads back to the digestive process. We need stomach acid to be able to access the minerals in the food that we're eating. We also need other aspects of digestion to work correctly. We need bile to flow correctly. We need the pancreas to squirt out enzymes to really help us break those foods down and get the elemental nutrients out of that food. So when there's problems bringing minerals in the system, it's always about this digestive process. So if you're experiencing any digestive symptoms at all, then that's a really strong sign that there are malfunctions going on that can be corrected. And if you can correct them, then you can bring the nutrients in that the body really needs to function correctly. And when you do that, do you feel better? I don't know. I sure would like to hear from you if you do. That's what we see with our clients. We see that when we can help the body bring in the nutrients it needs, oh wow, that's weird. The body works the way that it's supposed to. Which is why it's not usually about supplementing with a specific amino acid. The body needs all these other minerals and cofactors and all these things that we can get from our food if we can digest that food correctly. So what's the fix for this issue then? Well, as you can see, there can be different things that can create this problem. So it's not like there's going to be a supplement that fixes depression for everybody. That's never going to happen. You have to figure out what's creating the trouble for you. You have to look at, do I appear to have low stomach acid? Is my bile flowing correctly? Is there some type of overgrowth here that needs to be taken care of? All those things need to be corrected in order for this entire digestive process to work correctly. You can increase stomach acid. There's easy ways to do that. You can supplement with betaine HCl capsules. If you're going to do that, you really want to know how to do it correctly. We'll have a link to a video in the description below for our video on 9 betaine HCl mistakes that you want to avoid. You'll want to watch through that. But it can be about more than just fixing low stomach acid. There can be other aspects that need to be corrected. If you're new to this channel and you don't know how to do those things, we'll have a link in the description for our totally free digestion course. And that'll walk you through figuring out which aspects of digestion are not working correctly and steps you can take to improve those. And then you'll be able to figure out, okay, what are the steps for me? Not the steps for depression. You don't want to just do what the cool kids are doing. You want to do what's going to help you. So when you look at your body, you can figure out what's going to be the most effective effort to improve the situation for you. So I hope that helps you understand how digestive issues have the ability to lead to depression type issues. So if you know that you have digestive symptoms, you can jump over right now and check out our video on full digestive reset. I can't wait to hear about your results.